Today's episode of Chat and Chew is sponsored by Be Positive Productions and Multimedia Studios, LLC. I like to think of imagination as something akin to a superpower. Used in the right context for good, it can help bolster our aspirations and propel us closer to our goals. We visualize the outcome of our accomplishments and work toward attaining said thing. However, when used to propagate untruths, reality can become distorted. We no longer know what's real and what's not. The more often we repeat something to ourselves, the more likely it is to become our truth, and the lines between perception and reality begin to blur. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a wrap. Please make sure you follow us on Facebook, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and of course, hit the bell to activate notifications that will remind you when we're on. Please be sure to leave us a comment to let us know how we're doing. We'd love to hear from you.
Welcome once again. This is Dr. Glenn Warren. Thank you for coming to our Chat and Chew podcast. So glad to have you. If you're on Facebook, please like and share. If you're on YouTube, hit the little button, send us a message. We will love to hear from you during this podcast. In our studio today, I have a dear friend of mine, Dr. Ruth, Terrance Ruth. We're going to be asking him some questions, and in a minute you're going to hear from him. Our takeaway today is that I want him to share his plans for the future of Raleigh. He's a candidate for mayor. Also, we're going to talk about the importance of fatherhood in the community, as well as his experience as administrator and teacher. How did that influence him as he runs for mayor again? And so, without further ado, I want to introduce Mr. Dr. Terrance Ruth. Welcome to the show today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes. I am so honored, man. You know, we have done some things together. The last thing we did together was the summit.
That's right.
Which was very powerful. You should share some. I want you to talk about some of those things again about students at school. And so, but before we really get into that, tell us about you. Who is Dr. Terrance Ruth?
You know, I usually tell my history through my mother's side of the family.
Okay.
But I've started to. My father's no longer here. He died when my son was 1. My son is now 10.
Okay, well.
And so I've been able to reflect on his story and how it contributes to my story. So now I tell my story through my father's side of the family.
Okay.
So my father is from Southern Pines.
It's not too far from it.
No, not far at all, about an hour out. Yeah. And he was a mechanic. He was always under the car. And he felt that his kids should have an easier life than him. He felt that working in the car was a very difficult, laborious job, and he didn't think it was a job that spoke to intelligence. Right. So he always wanted us to go to school. So my PhD is really encouragement from my father. But what he didn't realize, I was talking to a surgeon. The surgeon said, "I'm just like your father. If something happened to my hands,"
right.
He said, "I can't." And he said, "My intelligence is connected to my hands." And so your father was a brilliant man. He just didn't understand the connection between his hands and his mind. So what influenced me as a young learner and explorer was my father's obsession with intelligence. And so that's when I went to go, I started work on father, believe it or not. One of my earliest programs was called Off Youth, Our Futures, Our Fathers, Our Family. I was still in high school. I was just getting out of early college. And I had a program to try to reestablish kids who don't have fathers. This is a long time ago. And that has led through my whole life. That has been a drumbeat through my whole life. And then when I became a Turner principal, I was in a school of young boys who were incarcerated. Really? They didn't use the word incarceration, but everything was the same. Hands was handcuffed, feet was handcuffed. They had sort of orange prison garb, and they were marched to class. Everything's the same. It's just young adults. Most people would never experience a school like that. But what I found is that the consistent among all the kids when they didn't have a father. And that began my exploration. That's when I went to get my master's. I went to go get my PhD. And so if you see me and you see me all the time, Glenn, my son is with me.
Yeah.
He is my shadow. Because I don't want to just have a theory of fatherhood. I want to live it out. So
Right.
that's really what led to the person you see today.
Yeah, so you got one child.
One child, Miles. Yep.
Y'all live in Raleigh, you and your wife?
We are in Raleigh. So he was born at Rex Hospital, and then me and my wife were married at St. Paul.
Okay.
Under the late Reverend Edmund.
Yeah.
So my family and my career pretty much was birthed out of this beautiful city. So I'm glad that I'm getting a chance to put my hat in the race to really help lead it. So yeah.
Yeah. So your father was kind of like my father. He had a 4th grade education. My mom had a 6th grade education. And together they had 7 kids. And he put 5 out of 7 to a 4-year college.
Wow.
I mean, he worked 16 hours a day.
Wow.
8 hours of one job from 7 to 3, and they come home at 3 o'clock and eat and go to work for husband from 4 to 12.
Yeah.
He did that most of my lifestyle growing up. And his thing was, and he worked. Farm, he worked on cars. He did whatever he needed to do to raise his family. And he taught us what it is. We didn't, now kids could go stay at other people's houses.
Yeah.
No, my daddy, you're not staying nobody out, So that was the type of man that he was. And like yourself, my early involvement in fatherhood started when I got out of college.
Sure.
I started working in the school system. I was teaching for a little while, and then I wanted to be a coach, but then I got introduced to social service, and I kind of changed my major and went to school for that. But I'm always involved in men.
That's right.
Either starting a men's school.
That's right.
While in church, I was in charge of the men's fellowship.
That's right.
And that thing just kind of progressed on and on inside, empowering fathers. So today I want to ask you a couple questions. As relate to fatherhood, as relate to your run for mayor. This question is, as a father and a community leader, how has your role as a parent influenced your approach to public service and campaigning?
That's a really good question. Usually when somebody introduces a policy, there's a delay before you see the impact of that policy.
Right.
So if you're getting into it's called a public servant. So if you don't understand the public side or the servant side, then you get into the wrong role. And the reason why it's a servant, because there's a cost to your time spent in that role, and there's a delayed gratification because you don't get an immediate response. It's for someone else. Your decision, your time, your labor is really for someone else. And then the further you go up, if you go to state or federal policy, it's really for a whole nother generation.
Wow.
So you're not even talking about it. We are in a teacher shortage right now. That decision is linked to somebody's policy decision years ago.
Really?
We are in a booming sort of saturated prison environment. Those numbers are due to somebody's policy years ago.
Oh.
We have mental health and homelessness almost seem like the same group. So you saw years ago a closing of mental health facilities.
Yes.
So somebody's decision years ago is what we are living in today. So policy is really for the children. It's really about your kids. It's really about my son who's 10. It's almost not about you. That's why it's called a public servant. Wow. The role is actually about somebody else. And you're seeing the trends of a problem and you're trying to put policy in to address something that will impact somebody else. The hard part about that framework is that our country lives in a country that has high competitive work environments, high competitive family environments. So they want to know what school your kid going to, what school my kid going to. High competitive college environment. Are you going to Harvard? Are you going to NC State? Are you going to USC? And that creates individualism. High competitive, high concentration of individualism. So now you can't even see why somebody would go to do something to help somebody else. You won't even see why somebody would go and spend time and labor to help somebody else years from now. And so we have some work to really reintroduce what it means to be a public servant that somebody else down the line will benefit from. And so that's how I link my role as a father, my connection to kids when I was a teacher, in policy moving forward.
So I spoke with a gentleman yesterday. He was talking about fathers involved in the school system. And as an educator, as a principal, how is it important? I know it's very important, but how is it that fathers sometimes be left out of the equation when it comes down to getting involved in the school system?
Well, I'm going to zoom out. So we have a pretty tough history around women getting access to education.
Yes.
So it was a men's role, and then women slowly were allowed to learn and be intelligent and work in the workforce and become a leader in the workforce. And that argument is still going on today. We still have yet to elect a woman president. I mean, so that conversation is still rumbling today.
Right.
So women now are the leading college student demographic. Men are actually, their enrollment numbers in college is going down. Women are the highest concentration of graduating demographics. We graduate more young ladies, and we enroll more women into colleges. And so we are seeing just a wave of women really taking control of that learning education opportunity. Now I want to zoom into just the Black male experience for a second.
Okay.
And I want to zoom into K through 12.
Okay.
So somebody sent me the minutes for the Association of Colored Professionals. I can't remember the full name, but the minutes. And the minutes were from the meetings before they integrated the schools. And so the meeting they were led by men and reverends. Reverends and teachers were connected in the early Black, K through 12 history. The men were debating whether white parents would allow for them to teach their kids. When they integrated, we only talk about kids going to white schools. We don't talk about what happened to the Black educators that once held those rules. Right. So I was talking in the contemporary sense around the absence of men, and there was a historian that took me back to that moment. They said it was a moment where there were a lot of Black male educators. So it wasn't like they just didn't exist ever. There was a moment in which, before integration, we had a lot of Black male educators. When integration happened, a lot of our Black educators either lost position, were demoted, or didn't have students to teach. And so that history, we can't ignore that, talking about the contemporary.
So what policy was put in place way back then that really
there was a policy to integrate schools. And so there originally was separate but equal, and then eventually they passed a law during the Civil Rights era of the 1960s to make sure that schools were integrated. We got legends like Dr. Flood, who was here in Raleigh, who led that work in North Carolina. But the rules centered around the students. And the students were allowed to bus to predominantly white schools. The research showed that very rarely did you see white students bus to all Black schools. So you only seen an exodus rather than an exchange. And so because there's an exodus, that means you're getting less and less students in this all Black school, which means you're dwindling the job opportunities for those Black teachers. And so that's what we saw. And right now we're having a hard time recruiting, retaining Black male students. And then we have a difficult time with Black male professionals. You usually see if a Black male is a teacher, they're elevated really quickly to principalship.
Right. Yes.
And they leave the classroom, and so you have a lot of Black like superintendents. Like this area is led by Black men.
Yes. Yeah.
But in the classroom, you see. Yeah.
Oh, really? That's amazing. So what policy also now can we get to put in place which encourage fathers to get involved in their kids' education?
Yeah, so I think one thing that's needed, both for the behaviors that we're seeing that allow for Black and brown, any kid, period. We have low income children to not graduate at the rate that they used to, high school that is. We need a very strong pre-K program. We need to marry parents to education early, like birth early. And the research showed that earlier you can connect the parent to the kid's learning journey, the more likely they'll be successful later. We like to start in high school, or when the SAT starts, or when the ACT starts,
right.
Or middle school when there's transition in their body. But the research showed the earliest you can make that connection, the better off later. And so I want to connect fathers and mothers to their kids learning early, pre-K.
Wow.
Pre-K. So I read an article, a letter to my son, with Ed&C magazine. Ed&C is a statewide newspaper magazine, and it started 10 years ago. And in that letter, I'm writing a letter to my son who will one day read it, and showing him the books I'm reading and showing him the issues I'm wrestling with. I'm connecting my journey, my story, my learning, my curiosity to his life. I think parents need to do more of that. It's not just the school need to teach my son or the Sunday school need to teach my son. It is my job to be the lead educator, and the public school becomes supplement to that. And I think if we take that role on, if I'm my kid's first teacher,
Right.
I'm the father, I'm my kid's first teacher. To me, I think that's the best disposition to have when you're talking about what does it mean to incentivize parents or fathers to be in their kids' life at an early age.
We were talking at the summit, and you shared, I can't remember what it was, you shared about education when father get their kids, which is kind of what you shared now.
Yep.
How important it is for father to be involved in the early, not until high school or whatever.
That's right. Yeah. So by the third grade,
Yeah, this was.
the research showed that they can predict, the outcome of your child.
Yes.
By the third grade, they can tell how likely they are to graduate high school.
Yeah.
How orbital prison. There's some scholars that believe that you can predict the number of prison cells you need by the third grade. And then also there is some information that connects third grade to how much money you will earn, your earning potential. So by the third grade, they can predict that out. And so if we're not engaging kids before they enter school, we want to wait until a teacher comes and they get a good teacher or they get a good principal. That's too late. I think for fathers, you start early. Matter of fact, I call it the first 90 days.
Yeah.
You connect with that child the first 90 days, and you commit to that child learning all it can before it enters school. The studies show that kids enter into school, whether it be public or private, with a view of the world. So if there's racism, that starts before they get to school. If it's sexism, that starts before they get to school. Is it classism, that starts before they get to school.
If it's bullying,
yes, all of that.
All that stuff.
They enter into school with a framework. And sometimes we love to blame the schools all the time. Again, there's roles that different entities play in society.
Right.
But there's also a role that the home plays.
Yeah.
And there's also a role that the father plays. And it's clear that the kid enter into schools with a certain worldview that's linked to their family.
So I tell the guys all the time, we do have a systemic problem, and we got an individual problem.
Yeah.
We need to fix the system, but fixing the system is not going to fix the individual problem.
That's right.
And sometimes we want to blame the system for everything.
That's right.
That's wrong, and we don't take responsibility as parents.
That's right.
To say, hey, it's not up to the school to teach my kids.
That's right.
I should be, you got to send them to school.
That's right.
But I should be the first teacher.
That's the first teacher, hands down. My son witnessed me reading at home. My son watched me study with a highlighter. My son is in my class when I lecture. He's watching me engage in learning and academia, and deep thought and critical thinking. He don't have to wait till a teacher comes and says, hey, you need to read. Reading is important. Yeah, my dad told me. My dad showed me. So, I mean, I think there's a way in which you can engage early. Or if learning is not your strong suit, if you didn't do well in school and you're nervous about being your child's first teacher, the principal, the mayor in Apex didn't know how to swim. In front of the whole city, he took swimming lessons. Being vulnerable and transparent is one of the most dynamic lessons you can give a child. That's one of the most dynamic. Hey, I need to learn how to read, and I want you to learn how to read with me. Wow. That's the most dynamic lesson that you can give. Humility, vulnerability, transparency, honesty. Man, that's the best message you can give a child.
Right. The transfer. Also, some of you talked about the importance of tutoring.
Yeah.
Now, we look at tutoring sometimes, oh, you slow.
That's right.
So I'm going to bring somebody in to help you.
That's
And we look down on tutoring.
That's right.
What your point was,
That's right.
tutoring is just the opposite.
That's it. That's it. If let's not call it tutoring. Let's call it a trainer.
Okay.
If you go to AAU, these kids got trainers on how to run fast. They got trainers on how to lift weights. They got trainers on how to eat, nutrition. Right. And it's seen as a boost to their potential to earn money in the NFL and NBA.
Right.
A tutor is the same exact concept. like literally, everything is the same. This tutor is trying to boost your potential to earn or get into one of the highest or most rigorous classes, which gives you a better chance at being successful in this society. And if you look at the owners of the teams, I'm talking the owners of the NBA teams, the owner of the MLB teams, the owner of they're all were high earning academic performers. They were top of Microsoft. Right. They were top. These were individuals that focused and honed in on learning. Now they own LeBron. Now they own Kobe Bryant. Now they own anybody else, Stephen Curry.
Right.
Those are the ones that own the team.
Right.
So if you're going to put your investment anywhere, I would put it in getting a tutor.
Yeah.
To boost your child's potential to be a dynamic earner when they get older, if that's your goal.
Okay, so what kind of policy, as a potential mayor, could you put in policy that will encourage that?
Yeah, so there is something called a disparity study. A disparity study is really a federal mandate that you have to have certain government contracts that go to Black and brown and women-owned businesses. That is just a mandate by the federal government. That disparity study is linked to government contracting. So you have government contracts, and the goal is to get more Black and brown and women-owned businesses in those contracts. So most people think the largest generation of wealth for a family is a home. You go buy a home, you get equity, you can move that over.
Right.
But really the studies show that the largest transfer of wealth is in government contracting. So Maynard Jackson in Atlanta, first Black mayor, he's famous because they call him the millionaire maker, because he was transferring government contracts to Black and brown communities. He received the excuse, we don't have enough Black and brown contractors. We don't have enough. He said, well, then let's create the pipeline. To get to your question, creating a pipeline in our city so that young Black and brown students, residents can learn how to be a contractor, learn how to be a city planner, learn how to take on some of these contracts that already have a dollar value to them.
Right.
And then they learn how to operate in big contracts. Then they learn how to manage really the money that's transferred in and out of governments, both state, local, and federal. There's big dollars in that industry.
Yeah.
And
a lot of times we're not at the table.
Well, I mean, our disparity study last year said that we fell in all the categories except for hospitality. So making food, which is just, of all the categories, you can get money from that, but it's the lowest you get earning potential in that category. And so there's a way in which you can create a pipeline by which people can, and then at that point, kids are seeing their fathers learn.
Yes.
Then you have families who are building companies that are
right.
Then you see a different environment. You see Atlanta.
Yes.
Nobody's counting the number of Black wealthy individuals in Atlanta. It's not even about wealth. There's an excellence that's operated when success is something that is attainable.
Right.
And in some of our communities, it doesn't feel attainable for some.
Right. And they lose hope.
That's right.
They go to the next thing they know, which would be drugs and alcohol.
That's right.
So the next question. You have been deeply involved as an educator and administrator. What are some of the changes you believe that's needed in Raleigh to make better, in particular, fathers in our education system?
Yeah, so
we ought to cover some of it.
Yeah, no, well, for me, I think the first thing we have to do is to literally focus on housing. Okay. Housing has to be the number one topic. We are seeing an increase in unhoused populations. It used to be that the unhoused population was dominated by single men. That used to be the narrative.
It is.
Single men used to be, then COVID hit, now we're seeing whole families. Most of those families are led by women. Then we're seeing fathers, single fathers with kids. Services are not geared towards that profile. Right. So that they can't even enter into services. And mind you, we're talking about the county now. County is really the one that provides housing services. But having a city-county partnership that says not only should we serve women with children well, we also should serve men with children well. Because if you don't help that man, you already losing out on that child.
Yes.
And so I think if we start to value the single father with kids like we do the mothers, I think we could do some justice for the kids that are living in that environment. And once a person is unhoused, it's very difficult to look at anything else. Right. It's difficult to look at the future of their children. Right. It's difficult to think about.
They're trying to stay safe. They're trying to stay out of the element.
Yes. I sat on a panel with 3 mothers who lived their life as unhoused family. And they wrote a book on how to do it. And they said the worst is when you have to parent a kid who's at school because the bullying is intense. One of them said it was almost dangerous. The bullying was at an intense level that was almost dangerous for their kid and for the other. They had to get a restraining order. So we're in a society where we don't even allow for people to be unhoused. We don't even allow for them to reintegrate into society. We don't allow for them to find dignity. We literally destroy them at every level, from kids all the way to adults. Right. If you're in a restaurant and somebody's sitting next to you and they unhoused, don't let them have a smell. Don't let them look down. And we almost completely delete that person.
Right.
I think if we're going to do anything seriously about men and fathers, we need to be serious about housing. And we need to have housing at all levels, and we need to increase our housing stock. Because if I can't get you in a home, you can't see beyond tomorrow.
Right. So what the case is, when I was doing work at Wake County, fathers coming home from prison. They got felon now. Their wives and their kids are living in supportive housing. They're living in, government-funded housing.
That's right.
Now he wants to come back home.
That's right.
But he can't come back home because he's got a felon. Now the mom wants him to come back home.
That's right.
The kids want him to come back home.
That's right.
But the system says
that's right.
He can't come back home because now he's a felon.
That's right.
So now you're going to either, if he do come back home at 5 o'clock in the morning,
that's right.
He's got to be out of there.
That's right. That's right.
So the system in love is kind of beating his father down.
That's right.
Because he did what he did, but he committed,
that's right.
He served his time.
That's right. That's right.
So now you make it hard for him.
That's right.
To do the right thing, right. And it end up reoffending.
That's right.
It end up going back to prison.
I mean, I was just with Dennis Gaddy yesterday. Dennis Gaddy, for those you don't know, he has been leading the charge in this state, in this region, on just providing dignity to those who were formerly incarcerated. Yeah. And his work is hard because once you are unhoused or you have a criminal record, people just delete you out of. I mean, your life is, the opportunities literally disappear. Yes. And he said it's an untouched audience that can be a workforce, that can be a volunteer force, that can really re-enter with some energy and rigor because they haven't had access for a long period of time. Right. But we pretty much delete that audience. So they had an expert come and talk about, how do we engage the unhoused population? Let me just zoom into that audience. His solution said you need to treat them as humans.
Right, that's the first thing.
That's it. We don't want to treat people as humans. We would rather you stay unhoused or stay incarcerated.
Right.
We'd rather you be in those positions rather than you reintegrate into our society.
Well, I mean, we've had some, I don't want to get into details of this, but, we got tragedies in housing, as you know. Yeah. And, as long as we was in certain part of Raleigh, nobody really close to that. Even the city. But when we moved into a nice neighborhood.
Come on, Cliff.
I mean, they were trying to find a loophole to disqualify us because we don't want these black, brown, and white people. They got drug habits. Yes. They got substance abuse. And some of them got mental illness. Well, 100% of them got mental illness. Yeah. But we don't want those people living in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And they tell you they fought us tooth and nail. We won the case after about 2 years.
Yeah.
But that's the society that we live in now. Yeah. It's called, I guess it was called newbie, not in my backyard. Yeah. You can do all that good stuff, all that social stuff, do it. Just don't do it in my backyard.
Yeah. So I'm the board chair for a place at the table downtown.
Yeah.
And that's the only place that I can go to and see somebody unhoused who is eating and somebody housed who is eating in the same location. The rest of our city, it's a hard way. You can go to a place where it's just all in the house.
Right.
And they all eat together. Or you can go to a place where they all house.
Right.
But it's very difficult to find a place where both are eating side by side together.
Same time.
And you're talking about a city of 500,000 people, and they got to stay that separate from each other.
Wow.
To me, I think opportunities are abundant when you want not a homogeneous group, but a heterogeneous group. We are homogeneous, where everybody's the same. They said that's where you don't see the best of that community or that neighborhood or that city. Right. Is when you have heterogeneity, when you have a mix of incomes, a mix of class, a mix of gender, when you have a mix, that's the best. It produces the best parts of neighborhoods, the best part of community, the best part of a city. We just have a hard time doing it. Right. And that, I think, should be the vision for the city. We need to mix everyone together. That's when you can then humanize that person who's unhoused. But also, if you look at research, drugs doesn't stop when you go to a wealthy community.
No.
Single fathers don't stop when you go to a wealthy community.
Right.
Mental illness doesn't stop when you go to a wealthy community.
Right.
Child abuse doesn't stop when you go to a wealthy community. Spousal abuse. I can't name a category where after it's done, suspension from school. All of it transfers over. It's just one looks better on paper than the other. And it's just there's no research that says once you move up in an income bracket that those things disappear in a home. It's just harder to see when you're in a wealthier community. But I think mixing different groups of people together, which our whole society is struggling with, especially in a campaign season like this, where they make a living off of you hating the other group,
Right.
or dehumanizing the other group.
Exactly.
They make a living.
That's the age they get.
That they spend millions of dollars to get you to not connect to your neighbor.
That's the age they're looking for.
Yes.
So you ran for probably 2022, and you're running again in 2024. What are some things that you learned in 2022 that maybe that you can apply?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you learned a lot since those last 2 years.
Yes. So I would start with one. Sometimes we overlook the most important asset in a city, and that's residents. We have some amazing. That's what I've learned all around the city. They have residents doing some amazing things. I mean, I sat in the living room with one resident that's on the board of Neighbor to Neighbor, and they said we want to build affordable housing. So a couple of years ago, we just started meeting in this gentleman's living room. And they built it. They had the ribbon cutting this year.
Wow.
And not just affordable rental where the owner of the land keeps the profit, but it's a transfer of ownership. Literally, the family that moves in there on Bragg Street now, they didn't go over to some Bragg Street. The home is so beautiful that you won't even know which one is the $500,000, the $1 million, or the low income. That's how beautiful it is. The family moves in, their rent goes into a fund. After 5 years, they get all of this money in the equity, a percentage of the equity, to go buy a new home in Raleigh. They are literally experiencing a wealth transfer that they would have never had the opportunity before. Wow. It is not using the bank. So you're literally looking at just a transformational structure where we're now seeing single mothers who didn't own a home before is now owning a home and is transferring that to their kids. So what we do is we put them through a program. Learn how to transfer wealth to your kids. Don't just buy it all up and spend it. Teach your kids how to become your kid's teacher. And then learn how to own a home. All of this is happening while they're paying their mortgage and putting away a little nugget on the side. Yeah. You're seeing families for the first time be able to benefit from the growth in the city rather than having it hit them. Right. That was from a resident that just was saying, I'm tired of seeing families displaced. I want to see more home ownership. And so from last time to this time, I've met some amazing residents that are doing similar things that are really changing the world. Maggie Kane, that place at the table, She's paying people who were formerly unhoused $20 an hour, $18 an hour. They've never made that much money in their life. She's putting pressure on restaurants to pay that amount of money. They get time off. It's amazing what residents, once they see a need in the city, they just target and focus on. To me, that has been the thing that I've learned the most, that our most important asset are the residents themselves. What has grown in urgency is housing. Yes. What we have seen is they passed the housing bond last time I was running. It was the $80 million housing bond. The market exploded. Now that $80 million, it doesn't have the same value. Right. $80 million may be able to buy you a hotel. And that might give you 100 units. Let's give you 100 units. We are in a countywide, we're in a 65,000 unit deficit. So we need 65,000 homes today, which equates to $3.2 billion. And we're talking about 80 million. So the urgency of housing is so intense that you can't afford to talk about anything else. Law enforcement, they get paid $50,000, you need $100,000 to live in our city. So the further they drive out, the more likely they are to resign. Right. Teachers get paid $30,000, $40,000. You gotta be able to make $100,000 in the city to survive. Kids, we have one of our really most intense homeless population is our colleges. We have an intense homeless population on college campuses. They don't have $100,000 to just survive. When they graduate, we're hoping that your earning power is $100,000. There's some degrees that your earning power is nowhere near $100,000. So we're losing our talent, we're losing our college students because the housing crisis is so intense. So to me, that has become the most alarming issue.
Yeah. So I know we got to kind of wrap up, but so earlier you talked about we're living today because of policies that somebody did a long time ago. What policy was put in place back then that have brought us to this point?
Well, we live in a weak mayoral structure, which means most people think of New York, where it's like a CEO and the CEO brings in their own team and they run the city day to day. We don't have that here. We have a weak mayoral structure, which means you come, you sit on the council board, and you're pretty much like the board chair, I guess you can put it that way. But there's a city manager that makes over $300,000 a year. They actually operate the whole city. The council just makes the law, but in each council member makes about $30,000 a year. The city manager makes around $300,000 a year. So I'm just giving you the essence of the separation of responsibility. In this state, we can't demand that a developer gives affordable units. We have to have a strategy around land acquisition. That means we got to buy land. The only way we can own affordability is if we own the land. Yeah, right. We can try to incentivize developers to build, but we can't make them do it. Right. And so unless we have a deep strategy around land acquisition, land that the city or the county own, then we can't say that this is going to be 100% affordable for 100 years, 30 years, whatever that may be. And so we need a land acquisition strategy that's now beyond Raleigh, because Raleigh land is so expensive. We need a Wake County acquisition strategy. Right. It can't just be Raleigh.
Yeah. So the government got to get involved.
Yeah. The crisis is too intense it's too expensive to build affordable housing. So a developer is not going to, a private developer is not going to come in and just build affordable housing. It's too expensive. Right. They're gonna make an affordable housing, but it's going to be up near the $500,000 mark. It's not going to be and then affordable. Yeah, and then affordable housing is based on an average. So it's average median income. That means that my colleague at NC State just received a Habitat for Humanity home because her salary qualifies as affordable housing. So you're not talking about low 30% AMI. I'm talking about we're not talking about $25,000, $50,000 a year. We're talking about up near $80,000 a year. That is affordable housing in the city. Really? So we're not talking about, when people say affordable housing, we're thinking, no. NC State professor is in a Habitat for Humanity home.
And make it $80,000.
Making $80,000 a year, and that's affordable housing in this city.
Well, Terrance, we could talk about that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
I really, so I want you to look at the camera over there, and I want you to tell the audience where they can go, make a contribution, stuff that you need. Tell them about yourself and the campaign and all that good stuff.
Yes, so You can find me on anything. It's Truth for Raleigh. We literally say truth is on the ballot. TRUTH is on the ballot. And all of our platforms, we're on everything from Twitter or X, Instagram, Facebook. And it's just Truth for Raleigh. TRUTH, Truth for FOR Raleigh. And that's .org if you want to go to the website and contribute to our campaign. And it's Truth for Raleigh even on YouTube if you want to hear all my interviews. Listen to all the candidates, but what you want to vote for is somebody who has a vision for the future. And so the ballot is long, and so the mayoral candidates are on the second page. So vote Truth for Raleigh, November 5th.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Terrance. You're a good friend of mine.
Appreciate you.
I really, know you have a heart for people. I really wish you the best in your campaign, and whatever we could do to support that, we will. We're going to continue to do this work together.
Yes.
And I got a couple more ideas that want to make this a problem. I love doing round tables. I love coming up with the solution, and I love your desire and your determination. And you're a researcher.
Yeah.
And your research to bring to the table what needs to happen, how we can turn the page and make it better for our kids and our Black kids.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. Again, thank you for tuning in our weekly Chatting to broadcast. Please like us on YouTube, hit that little red button on Facebook, and until we meet again, I'll say so long. Here's 3 ways you can support our Dads at a Distance initiative. Give a copy to a family member, a friend.
Please.
Donate monthly, a book monthly, 5 books monthly, how many books you want to do monthly donation. Reverse book signing, your church, your business. You can make a donation go to our website at www.afatherforever.com and go to our PayPal at Fathers Forever. Our Cash App is $Fathers Forever. Make your donation today. Please include in the note section, include DAAD. Again, include in the note section DAAD.
If you or someone you know would like to be a part of the show, please visit our website at www.afatherforever.com or call us at 919-779-9905. The Chat and Chew podcast streams Thursdays at 8 p.m. on YouTube and Facebook. To schedule a reverse book signing or to find out more information about how you can become a part of the programs you've heard us mention today, please be sure to stop by our website as well.
Hello, everyone. This is Glenn Warren, founder and executive director of Fathers Forever. I want to share an alarming reality with you. 627,000 fathers are incarcerated that have kids under 18. Now, there are 56,000 moms incarcerated who have kids under 18. The reality is there are so many more fathers incarcerated than moms. This is why I Am a Father Forever book exists. Now, I need your help. I am inviting you to help us get this book into as many fathers incarcerated as possible. Here's how it works. For your donation of $22, we will provide a book to an incarcerated father. Thank you in advance for helping Fathers Forever heal fathers and save families.